I've got one more big thing for you today.
Yeah! Hello, my name is Jay and welcome back to my Tech Vault, and today we've got some exciting, extensive, and a lot of information to cover. So if you're unfamiliar, I recently did a big live stream following the whole keynote at CES. I had the stream up and I basically talked through what each thing as it was announced and what it actually means. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to give a full overview and summary of pretty much the most important stuff that relates to what I cover on my channel, which is mostly computer stuff, in particular stuff for gaming and particularly workstations as well, but stuff that is more the desktop PC market. Now obviously AMD did release a bunch of APUs in here and I'm not going to necessarily touch on that just because the stuff that I've really been talking about, like the processors, etc., I want to save for I want to save that kind of the APUs and stuff for the other people that's basically what they're into, which is laptops and stuff. We do kind of desktop parts around here, and so that's what I'm going to focus on. Also, this CES live stream is of course from AMD, so credits to them. That's where I'm pulling some of these clips from. So obviously I didn't take these clips, so this is definitely the AMD live stream, so please go check that out. And as for that, let's get into basically the exciting news. So if you're unfamiliar, I did a full live stream. I basically, as I said, talked through each thing. There was it was a big roller coaster. A lot of the people that were in the chat, and I'd recommend actually looking at the live stream because it does show you the chat. A lot of the chat and stuff, we all kind of had this kind of dreading feeling that it was a roller coaster. We started with, well, first off, you looked up online, the stream was only supposed to be, or this whole presentation was only supposed to be an hour, and we were about an hour in, and they still hadn't announced any new CPUs, so we were really disappointed. So there was a lot of stuff to cover here, so I'm going to jump right into it. So we have release dates. That's right, we have release dates of these products, and it is Q3 of 2019 or Q2 of 2019, which comes in right around June, which means that the CPUs and the GPUs will be releasing in Q2 2019. That's right, both, according to Lisa Su, will be both releasing then. We didn't get any specs and specific specs for the CPUs, but we do know that they perform, they have about the same clock speeds based off the benchmark that we were shown, which I'll go into more detail when we get there in a second. Which means for the first time in history, AMD has surpassed Intel in their clock speeds, which, congratulations AMD, that's a tough challenge to beat. So let's also talk about this. So we've got Q2 release dates for both the graphics cards and the CPUs. So let's also go through and talk about the graphics cards. So we have the AMD Radeon 7. That's right, AMD Radeon 7, which is equivalent in performance to a 1080 Ti or a RTX 2080. Which is actually surprisingly pretty good. And then it's also running the 7nm Vega 2 architecture, and that's of course rocking 16 gigabytes of quote-unquote high bandwidth memory. I don't know if this is GDDR6 or HBM2. I would assume since NVIDIA is going the GDDR6 route, I would assume AMD would do the same. So I would expect to see something along that line of course, seeing maybe that same type of memory, but we've got 16 gigabytes of it, which one of the things that Lisa Su talked about in her keynote is that these graphics cards were really good for workstation users. They were designed, quote-unquote, for gamers, but they were originally or they are really good in workstation tasks, which kind of makes the feeling that since this is equivalent to a 1080 Ti, which we were really expecting a 2070, RTX 2070 performance, around a 1080 performance, somewhere around there. We were really expecting that, so it's nice to see that we actually got performance that's higher. They actually loaded up a game, and the game was getting maybe around 180 to 70 FPS at 4K, which is really, really good, especially coming from AMD. Also, the clock speeds is 1.8 gigahertz for the clock speeds of the Radeon 7. So that actually looks like it's shaped up to be a pretty strong competitor. The price comes in right around at $699 compared to an AMD's RTX 2080, which is of course $100 more, which performs about the same, which is kind of expected. Now that's of course the high end. We don't know what the low end stuff are. I would assume these rumors are true. All the rumors that I've been talking about for the last weeks and stuff, there's nothing that really disproves it. Rather that, of course, the RTX, or not the RTX, the Radeon 3000 rumors, but I will say that there's some stuff in the CPUs, when we start getting to CPUs, it really does start to kind of disprove what I would have thought, especially some of the rumors from Adore TV. So also moving on, there was a really interesting benchmark, and I want to take a moment to talk about this benchmark because it really means a lot. So we have an 8-core AMD processor, which we don't know the name of. It's just an 8-core processor versus a 9900K from Intel, an i9 9900K. And they have equal performance. Actually, AMD comes out in the lead with 8 cores, 16 threads, which really is interesting because what does that mean? Well, obviously AMD could have overclocked, and I don't know. We don't want to think that AMD is pulling an Intel where they have it on a super chilled cooler, but they've got two PCs. One's running i9 from what we've been told, and one's running an AMD processor, this unknown next generation processor. And the AMD processor is better than the i9, and they have the same amount of cores, which only leads to one kind of really assumptions. Either it's got a higher IPC, or we've got higher clock speeds. And I would be willing to bet, since 7 nanometers has that potential, I wouldn't be surprised to see some really impressive clock speeds, especially because the i9 goes up to 5.1 gigahertz, I believe, or no, it's maybe 4.9. I don't remember exactly, but I do know it's close to 5 gigahertz. And I would assume this Ryzen processor, which is next gen, will also be higher than that because it got a higher score, which really means for the first time in history, AMD is beating Intel not only in the cores game, but now in the CPU speed game as well, which is kind of crazy. Also, which is as for a moment now from what we've seen, we could move into some of the server processors as well. So AMD has not decided to up, which is also important to CPUs. So please don't tune out thinking this doesn't apply. So AMD EPYC, which is their server grade processors, still has 64 cores and 128 threads, with 4 times the single thread or single point floating numbers performance and 2 times the regular performance. And so that you're like, okay, that means really nothing. Well, first off, if you notice how the amount of increase it is without changing the amount of cores, that means that the clock speed has heavily increased. Also, since they are not increasing the cores, that makes me skeptical of the previous rumors that if they're not increasing their cores on their professional server grade market, are they going to increase cores on the desktop market? Now, according to the rumors from Adore TV, all the announcements for these processors were supposed to be at CES 2019. We did get an announcement about processors. We didn't get any specific specs. So basically what we have now is we have no confirmation that these rumors are true or not true. They kind of got announced, but I don't know if they really would count as being announced because the specs weren't really posted. We just know it's 7 nanometers Zen 2 architecture, and it's running pretty decent. She also did mention, another thing to keep in mind, when she was doing some of the benchmarking and testing of this new processor, she would also pointed out herself that the processor she was afraid was actually going to crash, and she was glad it didn't crash. That kind of does show, though, that this is still in development and still is kind of a far bit off from actually being consumer ready. So I would expect to see, according to what she said, is that over the next couple months we will see actual postings and publishing about these new processors. So she also said that some of the games that will be supporting it also will be releasing later along the lines. So I would assume maybe with the release of those games, we may actually getting some information about these graphics cards and processors. So now we're going to move in a little bit about speculation. So we do know that there is a high-end Radeon 7 card. We also do know that there is a pretty powerful or high-speed Ryzen 8-core 16-thread processor, which really leaves us at a really weird conundrum. We have, of course, 2 options. Number one, the rumors are true, and this is somehow a Ryzen 5 processor, according to the rumors from Adore TV. And that doesn't seem likely. Why? Because, of course, the Ryzen 5 didn't have any speeds, according to these rumors, that were higher than the i9, which means that if this is a special bin processor, it may mean something, but not really. It just means it's a bin processor, or this is actually symbolizing the top tier Ryzen 7 processor, and we aren't going to get any of the rumors that actually come true. So we might actually just end up with a higher clock speed Ryzen processor that competes with Intel with 8 core 16 threads, and we don't actually see the double the clock speeds or higher core counts than we originally thought. But that she also did say that these the core speeds were not final, which she made sure to put that in there, which at the time I was thinking meant that these were only going to get faster, but now that actually makes me think that there's also a slight chance that they actually may end up being slow, or the cores may actually be slower, and we may get performance in cores elsewhere. So it really is all speculation now at this point. We've got confirmation that we are getting a Ryzen processor, but we don't have any information necessarily retaining except the release date, and that we'll hear more information. We do know we've got a Radeon GPU that also has some impressive performance numbers and actually does compete with a 1080 Ti, which is more than we originally thought. So that kind of same idea would hope that maybe we'll get something more out of the processors as well. Time will only tell. So of course, if you're interested in watching the whole stream, my reaction to it, I definitely recommend checking out the full live stream, my commentary on that, and kind of reacting to that, which was some pretty impressive stuff. And as always, thank you very, very much for taking some time out of your day to join me today. And check out my channel for other cool tech-related news, videos, reviews, builds, or anything of that nature. Goodbye.